Hello there, my name is Jumpy, and today I'm going to talk about The Visit and Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery. Let's get to the first movie. M. Night Shyamalan is back! And by back, I mean he's back on my TV screen because I watched one of his older movies that I haven't seen before. I already gave my feelings on Shyamalan in my Knock at the Cabin video, so go check that one out if you haven't. But in summary, he's one of my favorite directors just because I think he's so fascinating and I always get something out of watching his movies. There are gaps in what I've seen in his filmography, and one of the movies I haven't watched until now is The Visit, which is his found footage horror movie from 2015. After a string of flops, this is the movie that brought him back. It did quite alright financially, critically, and with audiences. I'm going to preface all of my thoughts on the movie by saying that this film has a twist, and I've known what it is for many years. These are the same conditions as when I watched The Village and knew how that movie ended long before I ever actually saw it. In both cases, I don't feel like knowing the twists in advance really hurt my enjoyment of either movie, and my ratings wouldn't have changed if I knew nothing beforehand. The Visit is about two teenage siblings, older sister Becca and younger brother Tyler. Their father ran off and left them and their mother alone. The kids have also never met their grandparents because their mother cut her own parents out of her life long ago when she left home. Well, now these grandparents have reached out and want to spend time with their grandchildren, so these grandchildren go and visit their grandparents. Becca decides to film the trip and make a documentary out of it. Good thing too, because some interesting things happen. The grandparents start acting weird and creepy. Because Becca wants to be a filmmaker, she uses a lot of jargon. It's a little awkward, but she wasn't obnoxious. Tyler is a more humorous character. And he raps. The rapping is not good. I did roll my eyes, but I laughed when Becca calls him out on how he talks about girls and the words he calls them. Then he uses a few other gendered insults afterwards and she doesn't care. But at least they acknowledge that it's wrong once. That's better than nothing. As bad as the rapping is, it's still not as awful and embarrassing as the rapping in another found footage horror movie I watched last year. Of course, I'm talking about Dashcam. That was complete shit, and it makes The Visit's raps look amazing in comparison. Fortunately, Tyler doesn't rap too much, and that's the only really negative thing about him. I liked both Becca and Tyler as characters. The acting was fine, and they have some good serious moments that I didn't expect out of this movie. I really liked the scenes where they interview each other. There's also some fun things between them. I'm not sure if any of this was improvised, but a lot of it works. I laughed a fair amount. So this is a horror movie, right? It's definitely good in that regard. It gets unsettling, and I was surprised by how off the rails it went. It's very well paced as it continues to get more over the top. It's delightful, and I was entertained. It's not realistic in the way it handles mental health issues, and I can't take that aspect of the movie seriously, which is the same way I watched Split, another Shyamalan film. Even though, like I mentioned earlier, I knew the twist going in, I still liked it. The reveal was good, and there are clues leading up to it that are fun to spot. So even if you do know it and haven't seen the movie yet, you can still enjoy it. Overall, I like this one. It's not peak Shyamalan for me, but there's some unexpected seriousness and weirdness that I liked. Aside from the rapping, I liked the main kids. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. The more I think about it, the more I appreciate it, and it is something I will read The Visit someday. Like a lot of people, I grew up watching the Austin Powers movie starring Mike Myers. I loved them. One time, I even drew Austin Powers in chalk at the drive-in that my parents worked at. I did this in the second lane at the box office, which was almost always closed since one entrance lane was usually enough, so he was safe and wouldn't get run over by a slow-moving vehicle. But the drawing itself was great and would have made Simon proud. I even gave him a speech bubble with "Yeah, baby" written inside. My mother took a photograph of this for me, and I thought I still had it because I remember seeing it sometime in the last several years. So I searched my closet, but I couldn't find it. I found pictures of me, of my childhood dog, and of my college trip to India, but no Austin. I was devastated because I'm not sure where else it could be, and I really wanted to put it on screen for this video right now, but I have nothing. I really enjoyed these movies at the time, but it's been over 15 years since I've seen any of them. I always wonder if the movies I enjoyed back then hold up today. Times have changed. I'm a very different person now, and there's things in movies that I wasn't even thinking about when I was younger and saw them. I don't want to go into specific examples, but sometimes I'll do a cursory search on if a movie holds up or not. There have been times when I've been horrified by the content of movies that I've seen and completely forgotten about. Sometimes I can look past things and recognize that what's in a movie is wrong and is a product of its time, since it's not going to influence me or my thinking in a negative way. But there are other times when there's just something I don't want to be around. So last year, I rewatched Wayne's World and its sequel for the first time in a long time. Both of these movies co-star and are co-written by Mike Myers. I always liked them as a kid, but never as much as Austin Powers. But holy shit, the first Wayne's World movie is fucking great. It's now one of my favorites of the 90s. The second one is definitely a step down, but it's still good. So in the back of my head, I was wondering about Austin Powers, another Mike Myers movie. I thought, there's no way this could possibly hold up over 25 years later. Out of curiosity, I did my homework and did a search on the topic, and some people said that the first one holds up surprisingly well, so I thought I should see this for myself again. Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery was released in 1997. It was written by Myers and directed by Jay Roach. It begins in 1967. There's a British secret agent named Austin Powers. He's great at his job and very much into women and free love. He works with Mrs. Kensington, who he has feelings for, but he respects her marriage. Meanwhile, a supervillain named Dr. Evil tries to kill Austin at a nightclub. When he fails, he cryogenically freezes himself and goes into space in a giant big boy rocket. Knowing that Dr. Evil will return someday, Austin freezes himself as well. 30 years later, it's now 1997. Dr. Evil returns and Austin is immediately unfrozen. Standing by is Vanessa, the daughter of Mrs. Kensington. She and Austin team up to stop Dr. Evil once and for all. This is a satire of James Bond movies. I've only seen a couple of the Bond movies that were made before 1997, and I don't really remember them all that well. But there's still a lot here to enjoy. The ridiculous character names, the convoluted evil plans, the pointing out of cliches, they're all great. What's also really smart is the clashing of the 60s versus the 90s and how times have changed. There's some cool stuff here and a lot of humor. The scene with Austin and the sneaker is still one of the funniest things ever to me. I need to mention how well done some of these jokes are. I'm usually not a fan of gross humor, but this movie had me laughing at piss, fart, and shit jokes, and the penis pump? Who can forget that? And the dad jokes throughout are so fucking good. Not every joke works, but most of them do. And I have to mention the wonderful subplot with Dr. Evil and his son Scott. Dr. Evil froze his semen before freezing himself, and this is the first time he's meeting his son. They are great in every scene together. Even though Austin is incredibly flirtatious towards Vanessa, there is a famous scene that a lot of people point out. She comes on to him when she's drunk, and he rejects her advances because it's not right to take advantage of her. That scene does go a long way for his character, as does respecting her mother's marriage, which I mentioned earlier. While I don't love the movie as much as Wayne's World 1, I would give this the edge over Wayne's World 2. I'm gonna be honest, I'm afraid to rewatch the Austin Powers sequels, so I'm not going to. I'm giving the first Austin Powers movie a 7 out of 10. I highly recommend this one, which is something I never thought I would do in the year 2023. Once again, we have two movies that I enjoyed, and I hope you like them as well if you decide to check them out. See you all next time.